It's a question that lurks in our minds. Could the foods we eat really affect our ability to concentrate, focus, learn and remember? Can the foods we eat really cause harm in our brains? Every day, when we choose foods to eat, do we ask ourselves, is this food good for my brain, my body, and my well-being? Well, nutritionists tell us that parts of the brain linked to learning, memory, and mental health are smaller in people who have lots of fast foods, hamburgers, fries, potato chips, and soft drinks in their diet. But their research shows that berries, whole grains, nuts, and green leafy vegetables preserve brain function and slow its mental decline. So, what does this mean for us? There's a lot of discussion around today about healthy food choices, about plant-based options, and food for our well-being. How do we determine what are the best foods for our brains and our health? Well, it seems that the food we eat does impact our brain. And to find out more information about this topic, we're going to meet a nutritional neuroscientist to help us. Join me as we discuss the impact of food on our brain, the best foods for our brain, and the foods that harm our brain. To help us discover which foods are superfoods for the brain and which foods are actually harmful to our brains, we're going to ask an expert in nutritional neuroscience, Dr. Delia McCabe. Delia holds a PhD from Adelaide Medical School and is the author of 2 successful books. Delia, welcome to our program today. We're delighted that you're able to join us to discuss food and the brain.
Thank you, Gary. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Delia, what is the relationship between the food we eat and the health of our brain?
Gary, that's a great question, and it's a little bit complicated, so let's break it down. Firstly, the brain is the greediest organ that we own, so it needs a constant and stable supply of energy, which the brain gets via our blood glucose. And that also depends on the health of our gut and on what type of food we're eating. So for stable, consistent blood glucose, the foods that are surrounding us are the kinds of food that we need.
Natural foods, plant-based foods.
Absolutely, and the color of these foods. If you look around, you'll see the color, and of course the fiber in relation to the gut, which we've discussed in another session. The second thing we need to keep in mind is the structure of the cell membranes. That's the neuronal membrane. That neuronal membrane needs to be made up of protein, but also, very importantly, the right kinds of fats. And here we have fats, which we've discussed in quite a lot of detail in another session. So without the right fats...
So can I just say, that's the fat that comes from our flaxseed and so forth?
Absolutely. Hemp and chia, wonderful fats, very specialized fats that the brain actually craves to be able to function optimally. Because just remember, the brain is continuously responding to our environment, both internally and externally. If it doesn't have those specialized fats, it can't respond really quickly. So that's the structure of the brain. Now, we need to talk about how neurons communicate with each other, because they don't just need energy for that, they also need specific vitamins and minerals. And they need that to be able to create neurotransmitters using protein as well. So when we have these kinds of foods in our diet every single day, we're supplying the right amount of energy.
Can I just clarify here? When you say these foods, you mean the foods we've got here, so our brightly colored fruits,
yes,
nuts, grains,
berries, broccoli, cauliflower,
the vegetables as well,
sweet potatoes. Look at those beautiful citrus fruit, papaya, avocados. All of those foods are very nutrient dense. So they supply the brain what it needs in terms of its energy. They supply what it needs in terms of its protein with amino acids. And it also supplies this wonderful background for neurotransmitter creation, which is what the messengers are. That's what we call them, neurotransmitters. And then, of course, we've got the right fats for the neuronal membrane. So all of these kinds of brain superfoods support the brain's optimum health and allow it to function really well in the world that we live in, which, let's face it, it is pretty overwhelming and complex.
So Delia, what are good foods for the brain?
Well, let's just look around us. All of these foods support optimal brain health because they don't just supply the important nutrients in terms of vitamins and minerals, they also supply the structure and the energy which the brain needs.
So these are natural foods. We've got our strawberries, our berries and so on. We've got our nuts, our grains, we've got our vegetables.
And good fats.
Yes, the flax seeds and so on.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people don't realize that these are really fantastic superfoods because a lot of the media has told people that we need to eat exotic superfoods. And look, we've got them here. We've got these goji berries and golden berries, and they are absolutely fabulous. But they're more expensive, they're harder to source,
Yes.
and it's much easier to just simply rely on what's readily and easily available.
So we're talking about strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, our nuts, our walnuts, our almonds, our dates.
Absolutely. These are the foods that we should be eating every single day because just remember, we've spoken about this, the brain is the greediest organ that we own.
Yes.
It needs a steady supply of energy. It is actually never asleep. Even when we are sleeping, it's still busy doing housekeeping. And if it doesn't have a constant supply of energy, if it's not a stable supply, because remember, we can't store any, we get mood fluctuations. We have an incapacity to focus and concentrate, which means it's much harder for us to learn, and it's also much harder for us to consolidate memory. So all of this has a very important domino effect when we do it properly because it gets right down to the neuronal level. The neurons function optimally when these are the foods that we eat, these superfoods for the brain.
So Delia, the superfoods, the good foods for our brain are these natural plant-based foods. What are the foods that are harmful or bad for our brain?
Well, we just need to go to the middle of most supermarkets and we find those bad foods because those foods are highly processed firstly. And the manufacturers want to make sure that they don't lose any money. So those products are shelf stable. Now, the minute something is shelf stable, you know for sure it's not going to go off. And we know for sure all this good food does go off. So highly processed food doesn't go off and it has to contain toxic compounds to allow it to not go off. So these include, for example, damaged fats, exactly the opposite of what these fats are. No antioxidants, which is exactly the opposite of these foods that are brightly colored. In addition, preservatives, flavorants, and additives, none of which support gut health or support brain health because they're only there to make sure that the manufacturer doesn't lose any money.
So Delia, these foods that are harmful to the brain, that are bad for our brain health, they are highly processed, highly refined foods.
Absolutely, and the multinationals, these very large corporations that make these foods, spend billions of dollars to get people addicted to that food. And I know we've touched on that in relation to mouthfeel. They make sure that that food tastes great. It's got the perfect crunch, it's got the perfect amount of fat, it's got
The texture.
Absolutely, and enough salt and sugar to get us really hooked. And so people are being led by their taste buds, but that has nothing to do with their health at all. And so it's undermining our health and it's undermining the state of our brains, which means it's undermining our mood. So things like anxiety and depression, learning challenges, all of these are related to the foods that the brain is getting, which isn't supplying its basic needs. So I get really cranky when I think about how much money these companies make because they're undermining the future generations, they're undermining the health of adults, and they're undermining the health of the aging population. So all in all, they're just bad news.
So would it be right to say then that they are making profit from our bad health?
Unfortunately, yes. They are making profit from our bad choices. But you see, this is the great thing about this conversation, because with this conversation, we're sharing with your audience how we have it within our power to look after our brain.
Ultimately, it's our choice, isn't it?
Always our choice, our decision. And it doesn't have to deprive us either. We have to just keep in mind that this food tastes fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that we've become accustomed to eating processed food because it's so much easier to buy. It's generally cheaper as well, which is also something that makes me cranky. And, you know, we've been led to believe that nobody would actively harm us, where that is unfortunately the case. These companies do not care about our health in any way, shape or form.
So making wise choices for a healthy brain, eat natural plant-based foods rather than highly processed refined foods. It's as simple as that.
Spot on, Gary, but the challenge is that it takes a little while for our taste buds to adjust. So we just need to take a little bit of time to get our taste buds accustomed to these really wonderful foods again if we've become used to highly refined foods. And, you know, if people have a sweet tooth and they really crave sweetness and they've been getting that from processed foods, all they need to do is eat a berry. Join me.
Sure, these look so good. Wow. So these are the foods that were designed to ensure our brain health, function, well-being.
Absolutely. And if we need a bit of an extra treat, let's do this.
What have you got here?
Follow my lead. Follow my lead. I'm going to take a date and I'm going to open it. And this is nature's candy. So do the same. And
date?
Yeah. Grab a date.
Okay. Open it up.
Open it up.
Right.
And now what we're going to do, we're going to just dip it into...
So we take the pit out, the pip.
Yep.
Right. And we what?
Dip it into the dark chocolate.
Okay. So we're back to chocolate here. And so dark natural chocolate is good for us.
Absolutely. If it is 70% dark, if it's organic, and it doesn't contain refined sugar, it's a great choice to eat as a treat. And you can see how sweet this is. It's very satisfying. It comes with lots of other nutrients and with fiber, which is exactly the opposite what highly refined, very sugary foods contain that one can buy at the supermarket.
So can I just say then, with regards to dark chocolate, 70%, etc., it's like anything. It's moderation, it's balance, it's common sense.
Yes, you wouldn't be eating this for breakfast, for example. But when you want a really lovely treat and you feel like you need
it's so good.
It's delicious. And you know, the thing is, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do this. You know, dates are freely available.
Yes.
And you can even dip a strawberry into that and enjoy that as well. I think the message that we need to get people to understand that this isn't about deprivation. Once you cut processed foods out of your diet, it doesn't mean you aren't going to eat delicious foods anymore. You're going to have more energy when you eat these kinds of superfoods.
Yes.
You're going to think more clearly, which means your focus and concentration will improve, and so will your learning capacity, and so will your memory and recall. You're going to feel better because your blood glucose is going to be more stable, so your mood is going to be improved. There are all of these wonderful benefits from nourishing the brain when it's really not complicated to do so, Gary. And it's really not hard work to just get yourself organized and make sure that you are surrounded by these kinds of superfoods.
And it's not just a one-off thing. This needs to become our regular diet, our pattern of eating and behavior.
Absolutely, because think about it this way. The brain never takes a holiday. It's on 24/7. It's the greediest organ we own. It uses upwards of 20% of the energy that we eat. And it needs to be able to be functioning optimally to allow us to make good decisions, to live our best life. And once we're doing that, a lovely thing happens. It just becomes a habit. And then we just build on that. And day after day, we've got more energy. We think more clearly. We're just happier. And guess what? We end up glowing.
It's all good.
It is all good, Gary.
When we don't get enough natural foods, these good foods, plant-based foods, and we are focusing more on highly processed, refined foods, how does that impact the brain? What's the result?
The first thing that happens is that the brain doesn't have enough energy. So what happens automatically? The brain tells the body, you need to eat. And the first thing that most people gravitate towards is highly refined foods, because guess what? They release energy very quickly. So this sets the really negative treadmill, bad domino effect in of processed foods and the craving for those processed foods, simply because the brain is demanding energy. The second thing that happens is that neurons can't function really well. They want the right fats, they want enough of the right protein, they want carbs to be able to produce energy, and if they are not getting those nutrients, also in the form of vitamins and minerals, they start functioning really poorly. They can't form connections with their neighbors, so we can't think clearly. Our capacity to focus and concentrate becomes diminished. We can't lay down memories, and then we can't recall them. And this is unfortunately what happens to many people as they get older. You know, we speak about dementia, Gary, and dementia is the umbrella term for people who have symptoms of the brain not functioning optimally. And Alzheimer's is the most common one of those diseases. The challenge is, though, that we also have other dementias like vascular dementia. And vascular dementia is directly related to a lack of blood supply to the brain, which is linked to heart health. So now we have to discuss exercise in a way, because when we're not moving enough, we're not pumping enough blood and oxygen into our brain. So once again, the neurons aren't getting bathed in oxygen and the right nutrients. So we end up with a huge challenge. Processed foods, not moving enough, and we get stuck in that pattern of trying to keep our blood glucose stable. So ultimately, these foods prevent all of those problems, whereas the refined foods do exactly the opposite. There is a challenge though. So let's just do a little analogy. Imagine you're leaving your home in the morning and you're going to work, and you get down to the bottom of your road and there's a detour sign. So you turn around and you know there's another way to work, and so you take that path to work. But then the next morning you wake up and you've got a detour at the end of your road, and then when you turn around and go to the other path that you took the day before, guess what? There's another detour there. Now that's exactly what happens to the brain when it starts battling. The neurons start functioning really poorly, so the brain has to do a workaround. And it can do so, soberingly, Gary, for between 15 to 20 years. So a brain can be struggling to work optimally for 15 to 20 years before we start seeing symptoms, where reasoning becomes challenging, where problem solving becomes a problem, where memory becomes a huge challenge. And by the time that happens, the brain has done so many workarounds that it's really, really hard to reverse that kind of damage. So best time to start eating this way is
The good foods?
The good foods
Yeah.
is yesterday. The second best time to eat these kinds of superfoods for the brain is today.
So, Delia, it's never too late to switch, make a change to these wonderful, natural, plant-based foods.
It's never too late, Gary, but the earlier we do it, the better.
Yes.
Because as I explained, once those neurons die and that detour doesn't work anymore, it's really impossible to get those neurons to work, to function, because they just can't anymore. And fortunately, we know that the one part of the brain that can really very readily make new neurons is the hippocampus, the memory CEO. So once we start providing all these superfoods for the brain, the hippocampus can start making new connections and new neurons can grow there. So we have to basically just give it the foundation, give it all the structures that it needs in the form of these superfoods to give it the best chance to start rebuilding specifically that part of the brain.
So these superfoods that we've been discussing can actually help heal the brain.
Yes, they can heal the brain. Obviously, yesterday is better than today, but it's never too late to start supplying these, because you see, the wonderful thing about the brain is that it's sophisticated and it's sensitive and it's very, very responsive to what we do. So even when people haven't exercised for long periods of time and they start exercising, even simple walking, we know the brain starts regenerating itself, which is fantastic news. And we also have some really great case studies of people who had the start of a dementia, for example, like Alzheimer's, who've been able to halt the progression of the disease by embracing this kind of food. So we have some great research that is starting, but I believe it's going to get a lot more robust when people realize that we really have a lot of power to change the way our brain ages and to heal it.
I'm going to start doing a bit of brain maintenance right now.
Great idea, Gary. Great idea. Full of antioxidants. Let's just mention something else for a moment. The brain is the greediest organ that we own, and in the process of generating all this energy 24/7, it needs a lot of antioxidants to be able to counteract free radicals, which are really damaging compounds. And if we don't have enough of these wonderful antioxidants, specifically found in brightly colored superfoods, we can't counteract those free radicals. And then that leads to and contributes to the brain not being able to optimally function and also not being able to heal. So diving into the berries, fantastic. If we do that every single day, we're helping the brain stay really very healthy and also helping it to heal.
You know, it's quite simple, isn't it? Fruits and vegetables. We grow some of the best in the world right here in our own country. It's available right the year round. When I think of the variety that we have every season, what a wonderful opportunity to care for our health and well-being, including our brain.
Spot on, Gary. You know, I always say to people, focus on the outside of the supermarket. Ignore the inside of the supermarket. All the processed foods are there, and you're supporting food manufacturers who do not care about you. Focus on the farmer's food around the outside, and you're giving your brain everything it needs with these beautiful superfoods.
Such good advice. Now, with all this good food available, this natural food available, what about dietary supplements?
Well, the dietary supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Just the dietary supplements to manage stress are going to be worth $17 billion by 2025. So we know that dietary supplement manufacturers are making a fortune. However, there is very little evidence to support the majority of the dietary supplements that most people consume. But it is important to mention that some people have a genetic anomaly for certain nutrients. That means the body can't use them in the same way that it can that other people do. So I always suggest that people go and get their bloods done and go and get a few specific nutrients checked. But dietary supplements can never, ever, under any circumstances, replace
this.
They
Yes,
can't.
yes.
There are so many compounds in all these beautiful superfoods that we haven't even discovered yet, Gary. What we know about them is super powerful knowledge, but all the things we don't yet know mean that we cannot use anything else to replace these foods.
So, just on the topic of dietary supplements then, it's something that we should take up with our health professional, our local doctor, get our blood tested, and then find out if there are any deficiencies and work with our doctor to sort that out. But the key is the good foods that we have all around us.
Yes, before people go to their doctor and start being worried about dietary supplements, change your diet. Do that for 2 or 3 weeks and see how you start feeling. The body can very, very quickly start balancing blood glucose even after 72 hours. And most people, once they start eating this food, realize they feel so much better. They've got more energy, they think more clearly, they sleep better. All of these things help us live our best life. So do that first. Focus on all this gorgeous food first. Get these superfoods into your body and your brain, and then see if you've got any lacking.
Does it matter how old you are when you start to make changes to really care for your brain with diet and exercise and so forth?
Gary, the research suggests, and I think it's quite logical, that the earlier we start looking after our brain, the greater the chances we have to have a fully functioning brain as we get older. But you know, because of the sensitivity of the brain and because it's really very receptive to whatever we do, feeding it with these superfoods will provide the nutrients that it needs to function optimally. So there is some robust research that's come out with some people that had cognitive decline in the form of Alzheimer's, and they started lifestyle changes. They started eating these kinds of superfoods. They started moving more. They started thinking in a more positive way. They started having closer connections and relationships with their community, and those people staved off the decline. So we know that it is possible to stop the decline from becoming really rapid if we take all of these lifestyle factors into account. And the primary one is, of course, the foundation is to eat these superfoods, because they form the foundation of everything that goes from there. Because then you've got energy to move, you see. Then you've got the capacity cognitively to connect with other people. And then you also start sleeping better. So there's a whole lot of really positive things that happen from just eating these superfoods. So So people who've noticed their memory slipping, people who notice they, not able to focus and concentrate as much as they used to, can definitely feel an improvement when they start eating these kinds of superfoods.
Delia, it's been a pleasure to have you on our program today, and thank you for sharing this latest information on foods that heal the brain. It's been most helpful.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a delight to share the information.
We all want to eat the right foods, but who is the authority on eating right? Fad diets and ideas come and go, and it can be overwhelming. So, who can we trust? Well, the Bible tells us that God made us and He knows what foods are best for us. In the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, God provided our first parents, Adam and Eve, with the best foods for us. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb yielding seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food." God made us and knows what is best for our brains and bodies to function at their best. We can feed our brains by choosing foods with high nutritional value and avoiding the processed and fake foods. God made you for more, and He wants you to make the best of today and every day of your life. If we follow God's guidelines, then we know that we're on the right track. And God's guidelines are very simple: a natural plant-based diet. You can't beat it. If you would like to know more about caring for your health and well-being, then I'd like to recommend the free gift we have for all our incredible journey viewers today. It's the booklet, Foods That Heal the Brain. This booklet is our gift to you and is absolutely free. I guarantee there are no costs or obligations whatsoever. So make the most of this wonderful opportunity to receive your free gift today.
Phone or text 0436 333 555 in Australia or 020 422 2042 in New Zealand, or 770 800 0266 in the United States, or visit our website tij.tv, or simply scan the QR code on your screen and we'll send you today's free offer totally free of charge and with no obligation. You can also write to us at the addresses on your screen or email us at info@tij.tv. Don't delay. Call or text us now.
Be sure to join us again next week when we will share another of life's journeys together. Until then, let's pray to the great God who created the universe and the wonderful natural foods we find on our planet. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for life, for health and for strength. We thank you that you have given us the capacity to enjoy life and live it to the full. Please continue to lead, guide and direct in our lives. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.